Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I was going to do this on Clinton popping her head up, saying that third-party vote was crazy. But that's not where this is going. This is going in a different direction. Um, look, but I am holding this picture here because I kind of want you to be very clear about what's at stake. Because this does mean something. I mean, she's standing here in this power position, American flag in the background, whatever connotation you want to give to the American flag. The camera's somewhat up, slightly erotic. You have this powerful woman thing. At the same token, there's this thing of, I laugh at your murder. Well, she did laugh when Gaddafi got sodomized by a machete, but knowing that I can murder you at a whim. It goes beyond that. It also goes into this thing of this collusion between money and politics. She raised $1.3 billion. That's an amazing amount of money. That money, for all intents and purposes, was burned on the White House lawn. And she lost, embarrassingly, to reality shows. What I'm getting at with this particular thing, or the direction it's going, is a conversation of, you can play around in the minutia, but understand you're playing around in the minutia, if that makes sense. Like, I hate these stories because I don't like taking, it's like keep your eye on the ball. You're functioning in a game space. You're functioning in a game space. This stuff, Hillary Clinton says this, Donald Trump does this, he embarrasses the other world leaders at NATO. He attacks Obamacare. Is Obamacare going to make it or not? Is he going to raise or lower taxes or not? What is Trump going to do in that office? How is Trump going to deal with Russia? Does Trump have something to do with Russia? All these narratives. These narratives are contrived. And somebody looks at something and says, hey, I see something going on. I want to create a story about it. But are those the stories that you really want to talk about? And are those the stories that matter? And my argument here is those stories are just contrived. They don't matter. They don't matter. They matter, don't get me wrong. If rules for leftists, hell, whether that's libertarian leftists, hell, whether that's even Trump supporters who just don't like this particular system the way it is, you need to understand the situation to which you find yourself. And you need to understand your actual issue, your actual enemy. Your enemy is somewhat faceless and anonymous because your enemy is the system itself. There's not some man behind the scenes moving the pieces. That's not what it is. It's the model. The model compels certain behaviors. Now, people like to make this distinction between politics and economics. That distinction doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. They are in tandem with one another. It's all of the vagaries, all of the tragedies that we've normalized as just being, oh, that's just happenstance, just the way they are. One personal tragedy after the other. It's normal. It's life. We even call it, it's life. We even have the saying, shit happens. But is it shit happens, or is it we make certain decisions that allow, quote unquote, shit to happen? Now, we have a rule set where people try to maximize profit. That rule set is based purely in scarcity. Understand what I'm saying? Meaning, whether you eat, whether you have a house, your living conditions, the ability for you to make decisions and influence the world to which you operate is purely dependent upon the amount of capital that you have, the amount of this substance, this conceptual thing, this figment of imagination of sorts, in your wallet, in your pocket. Now, if that's the constraint on your decision space, and you have a strata of society that you have the top 1%, and you have people either not making it, a large number of people not making it, another group that's just barely making ends meet, and you have another group that's making it, but full well understand they can fall into the lower batches. Each of these branches are vulnerable. They're aware that they're vulnerable, meaning they need to function in a way that makes themselves subordinate to any particular process that allows them to get capital, cash. That's influence. Meaning the top 1% has the capacity to influence based upon the scarcity of the individuals involved in the bottom of the process, meaning the other 99%. So you can compel people to do things that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise normally do. What I'm getting at is politicians are also accountable to this force. It's not like politicians are somehow above it all. They're not. They're people. They're also functioning under the same rule set, meaning there's scarcity, or at the very least, the incentives. The pleasure center of the brain that says, oh, I'm rewarded for this, and I'm not rewarded for that. Those things are also in play with the individual. Government is made up of politicians. It's made up of people who get into a particular office. This idea that politicians are completely unaware of things that benefit them is insane. Of course they're aware of things that benefit them. Of course they're aware of things that's going to get them more campaign contributions or that would allow them to have a position once they get out of that political office. Certainly they're aware of these things, whether you're talking about a Democrat or a Republican. Do you honestly believe that those people gave Hillary Clinton $1 billion out the kindness of their plutocratic hearts? No, it wasn't. It was pay for play. I'm giving you this money. I'm expecting certain things from you when you get into that office. That is politics. That is throughout the world over. Now, depending upon the society itself, meaning what that society is willing to deal with, that's the degree of cravenness you're going to get in those particular offices. Now, there's another weird feature that goes on with this. Capitalism allows this, because all of these things are based on scarcity, you need to pay off a certain amount of people to get them to not care about the other people. Meaning, you depend on finance, you depend on money for this particular model. That's great. Now, in depending on money for this particular model, you're going to take certain behaviors, meaning you're going to take a certain job, you're going to behave a certain way because you need that capital. That's all the stratas, with the exception of the top 1% strata, because for the most part, they're above it all. They have the capital itself. They can influence the bottom stratas. Now, if you're stuck in this process where you're, for the most part, need to take cash, and you're willing to take cash in order to do certain things within the world itself because you also need it, are you going to do something that's going to adversely affect your own ability to stay above scarcity? Meaning, you're going to function within this model, you're going to function on the things that you yourself need to get by in this model. Now understand, the United States only has 5% of the world's population. When we're talking about poverty in the United States, that's not the same thing as living off $10 a day everywhere else. 66% of the world, I think 60% of the world lives off $10 a day. So even when we're talking about poverty in the United States, we're still talking about 5% of the population, for the most part, a strata of that society being paid off to not care about the other strata. We don't even think about those people when we're talking about poverty. We don't think about those people. We think about us. Fuck them. I got to get mine. The point I'm making to you is, in some way, your function or your role in this particular society is somewhat of a payoff, even though your existence is somewhat minimal in comparison to the resources that we have at our disposal. Politics and economics are inextricably linked. It's like space-time. If you're talking about space, you're talking about time to some degree. If you're talking about politics, you're talking about economics. You can't get away from it. It's not like politicians are sometimes automatons of sorts. No, they're functioning under their rule set, just like everyone else is functioning under their rule set, meaning they lean a particular way, depending upon the things that advantage them. Capital is the point. It's the highest virtue. I have money. I can influence you. Yes, you can influence the political process. You can absolutely influence the political process by the money that you have for that particular thing. Any change that you're talking about making needs to be aware of this. Meaning, if you're talking about a revolution, and look, elections are revolutions. It's the peaceful changeover of power, going from one to the next. Now, any particular ideology tries to persist itself. That's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't be overturned. Now, the point I'm making to you is, it's okay to be aware of the minutia. It's even okay to play in the minutia. And to some degree, that minutia takes on a certain importance. You must understand, though, this is a contrived society. This is a contrived reality. There's no reason why our reality needs to be configured and arranged in this way. So yes, you can play around in the minutia. To some degree, you would have to use that minutia to get whatever you want to accomplish, because ultimately, the game space, the thing that we're functioning in, also allows the tools to change that. But it's almost like you need to be aware that you're in a game space. That's what I'm getting at. It's this thing of, yes, I can have these mini outrages, but I'm aware that the mini outrage is a mini outrage. And that ultimately, the overarching objective and the overarching goal is, I need to change this game space. I need to change the rule set of this game space. Because understand, when you think of all the vagaries and all the horrors, the tragedies, like I said, things that we just normalize as being, that's life. That's, quote unquote, not just life to the individual who's going through that tragedy. You're chained to a body. You're bound to a body. Whatever suffering you endure it alone. There may be other people in the room, but ultimately you're the only person who is experiencing that particular thing. That suffering, however, links you to every other person who's suffering, believe it or not. In that suffering, you should come to some kind of consensus of, we're all vulnerable. We all need to take steps to make sure that we ourselves are taken care of. Now, what I'm getting at is normalizing those tragedies and just saying, oh, this is just the way it is, decouples that process and decapitates that ability of trying to take steps to deal with those issues. Meaning, what parts of the systems are causing this? And how do we fix those aspects of the system that are causing this? We're efficient water. We act like we're not in a system. We're in a system. We're in a system. That system is contrived. It's almost like if you had a God's perspective and you could take the planet and you could take each instance of experience as almost like a cornucopia and just kind of spread it out into some kind of four-dimensional thing. Any particular slice of that experience, like the overall, I guess what I'm saying is, if it was somewhat of a painting, like if you can interpret it as a painting. Now granted, I'm saying God perspective, he's going to look at it differently, but from our context, if we're looking at it as a painting with certain colors being horror, tragedy, issues, calamities, social ills, that painting for the most part, or the painter of that is the model. The painter of that is the model. Whatever the incentive structures of that particular model is the thing that's painting that canvas. So yes, there is human agency, but human agency, again, is within ranges. And human agency is constrained based upon the scarcity model, meaning that person needs stuff to persist itself. That person does things for the sake of survival. Well, there's certain rewards that are built into the model. There's certain incentive structures for the person to behave a particular way. So yes, that person has agency where he can overcome that in certain situations. But the prevailing win is, do this, you get rewarded for doing this. That behavior, the cornucopia, that model, that canvas, that painting, is based upon the model itself. It's not random. It doesn't have to be that way. We make the choice for this particular model. That model can change based upon us making a decision to do something different. What I'm getting at is, yes, these little tragedies, these little annoyances, these things will pop up. Just don't lose track of the main point. The problem is the model. Yes, these people are individuals within the model, and those people are fucking annoying. But keep track that your point is the model. Like any revolutionary has to understand that this is a contrived reality. It's contrived. We function under an economic system. That economic system forces everything else to conform to accommodate it, including politics. Your government runs off of capital. The things that it expends, expenditures and everything else, those things are functions within cash. That means your government, even though it has a capacity to constrain finance, is subordinate to finance. If your government wants a spending project, all of these governments are in debt. It's like, it's a weird phenomenon that the government itself makes money out of thin air, and yet the government is in debt. That's mind-blowing to me. That's mind-blowing. That's a mind-blowing thing in and of itself. I am the creator of this thing, and yet I am subordinate to this thing that I've created. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. This model makes no sense. It makes no sense. It makes sense in the capacity of the people who have it want to persist it. Yes, that makes sense because, of course, you want to continue to advantage yourself. But from the perspective of the 99% of the people who have to deal with crime, poverty, violence, mental illness, all of these societal ills that don't necessarily have to exist, that exist purely because of the model itself to which we operate. It's just maddening. It's maddening to me that this is allowed to persist itself the way it does. All I'm getting at is, regardless of your political leanings, you should not want capital influencing the political process. You should want an earnest debate of ideas. You could completely disagree with me in everything I say, but at the very least, you should agree with me on the conversation that we have should not be influenced by cash. That at the very least should be a core understanding, and I would make the argument we can rally around that. We can have this fight on how society should be configured and arranged. I'd argue I'm right. I'm right from the standpoint of how do you get rid of crime and poverty and all this other stuff. I think I'm cosmically right. From multiple perspectives, I believe I'm right. You can disagree with me on that. We can have that fight. But I would rather that fight be an ideological struggle to which we can come to some consensus on. All right, we can come to some agreement on this. And I guarantee you, just regular people having that conversation to come to some consensus. Money should not corrupt that process. Money does corrupt that process. Money seeps into every pore of the political process. It is the thing to which it operates when those ads, every ad you see is being influenced by cash. Every time a person speaks, when they come out, they should have a logo on them for the people who are paying them to make that speech. What the public wants in no way influences policy, whether you're talking about Republican or Democrat. What influences policy is the people who are paying them. These guys get up there and say things in language coded in this idea of we and us. And yes, sometimes they use the language of them, but ultimately what they're not talking about is you. They're not talking about you. The language is deceptive. It's used to kind of pull you into something that you're not actually a part of. They just need your votes. They don't want your input into the process itself. So yes, they're going to use language of we, us, them, resistance, all this other stuff. Republicans are going to use this language of freedom and independence and all this. That's great. They're not talking about you. They're not talking about you. This is a capitalistic model. Capital makes the determination on your range of freedom, meaning the things that you're able to do is determined upon how much capital you have. When Republicans are talking about that, they're talking about people with capital. That's the people who they're talking about freedom for. They want that individual to be able to do whatever the hell they want and run roughshod over you. They want to run roughshod over you. You're supporting these guys. Understand what you're supporting. Same thing for Democrats. These neo-libs out there pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, literally undermining this democracy. Republicans were pushing it too, but goddamn it, Democrats were also pushing it. If there is nothing else that shows you a clear distinction in regards to what these people believe and what these people are trying to accomplish, it is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. If you can't rally around that, whether you're a Trump supporter, whether you're a Democrat, whatever you are, your political leanings, if you can't rally around that basic premise of we should be able to make our own choices and that those choices should not be influenced by cash. And right now, those choices are detrimentally influenced by cash. That's all I'm saying. I don't need you to agree with me. I do want you to agree with me on that particular point, meaning I don't need you to agree with each and everything that I come up with. I'd make the argument that the things I come up with solve issues. And we can battle on that. You'd lose, but we can battle on that. Yes, I have a braggadocious aspect of me. But don't miss my main point. But ultimately, we should be able to rally around this idea of money should not influence our politics. And whether you're a Trump supporter, whatever your leanings, that should be a core fundamental basis. You should not necessarily rally around a particular politician. You should rally around particular issues. That's all I'm saying. None of this hero, idealistic worship in that sense. What is a person doing? What does a person believe in? And how does that line up with your values? And how does that line up with real world effects in society? Those are the things that matter. I don't care about this other stuff. This stuff is minutia. It's not necessarily that the minutia doesn't matter. Yes, if they fire a missile strike, they're murdering people. That's minutia also. But yes, they're murdering people. There are real world consequences. All I'm saying is just be aware that there's a higher objective. Anybody who's trying to take political power needs to be aware of that higher objective. Whatever policy you put into place needs to be innocuous, but it needs to be monstrous in its consequences in regards to this capitalistic model. That's the model you need to attack in order to make any inroads into a better world and a better political process. It is too strong to just go balls out trying to take it on. You can't do it. You can't put in innocuous policies that actually help people, that actually tries to decimate the influence of capital. Universal basic income is one. Federal jobs guarantee is another. Putting in policies that undermine the energy companies' ability to essentially rape the public, meaning allowing houses to be powered independently. That's another. You can do one or the other. Food courts that would allow people, getting rid of food deserts and those type of things, using the federal job guarantee to build those food resources, meaning any particular person, regardless of their income, would have food, healthcare, free college. You can undermine the influence of money in our society. You can do it one policy at a time. You don't have to attack the whole thing all at once. But you do need to be aware that that's what you're doing. The things that you do, the things that you say, the policies that you take, the decisions that you make, the moves that you make, need to have that overarching goal in mind. Even though you may never espouse or even ever say that goal in mind. You may never even utter the words capitalism. But you need to full well understand that, yes, this is the thing that we need to weaken and ultimately undermine. Cash shouldn't be part of the process. I'm sorry, it shouldn't. It should be a battle of ideas. And right now, it's not a battle of ideas. It's a battle of who has the most cash, who can influence the process the most. And that needs to change. That needs to change. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.